Welcome. In this lesson we will learn about MATLAB function. We've already seen a lot of built-in functions. We will review some of them and then we will do some user-defined functions and we will solve an engineering problem. Let's start. So we've already seen some built-in function like log, like len, like square root, like sine in degree angle. So if we run this, we get something like this. Maybe this is a function we didn't see before, like factorial of 4. So factorial is like 4, 3, 4. Factorial of 4 is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So that should be like 24. There could be some, functions that we might not use quite often, like this error function, for example. So you don't want to solve this integral. So MATLAB did this for you, and this is called like an error function. So if you run this error function, for example, for 2, that you should get something or value around like 1. We've seen also some logical function like is not a number. So if we run this function, it should give us like logical 1 here, 0, 0, logical 1 here, logical 0, logical 0, and so on. We line space. So this is a new function which we didn't like. This is an array function. So for example, let me show you this like line. It already generates linearly spaced vectors. So basically I want to generate like a linearly spaced vector from the interval. So basically, like you see this, it takes like from 0 to 10, and then I want like 11 elements from 0 to 10. So that would be like 0. So I got like a vector that looks something like this. Okay? From 1 to 10. Like if let's put it from 0 to 10, for example, then I got something like this. Okay? We've seen also the plot function. So see the plot function here. So some function, like you see this line space, this is a function that give one output, which is like this array, and it takes like 3 input. Plot function here, for example, it takes like 2 input. It could take more than 2 input, and it just plots something to the screen. We have seen also like a function like bound function. So that's a function that will give me the maximum and the minimum value of like the arrays that I pass through it. So in that case, that should be 10 and 100. So that's a function. It takes like 1 input and it gives like 2 output. If I only have like 1 variable here, it will give me the first output, which is be the minimum. If I have like 2 variable here, it give me like the minimum and the maximum, the 2 output of this function. So if I run this, then I got something like this. We've seen also like round function, for example, that takes like 1 input, and it could take like another input, like as an optional input. So for example, like if I just said round A, it will round this to the nearest integer. If I say this like round A and put 2 here, means it will go like 2 decimal point and round from here. So if I then you get something like this. Okay. There could be also a function that take another function at its input. So like you find this interesting function here, ODE45. So basically that will numerically integrate this. So I have like 2x. So if basically I will numerically integrate like these 2x. So that's a function. So I will just in 1 minute, I will tell you what this like weird sign here and bracket and all this means. This is called an anonymous function. It basically define a function. Let me just show you if I run this one. So if I run this one, see, it tells you this is ODE function handle with a value. So basically that's a function. Then I have like this built-in function ODE45. Its inputs are like this function plus like these 2 other inputs. So basically it will integrate this 2x, so the integration of this, that would be x squared, and then plus c, and then I could, that would be my initial condition. So basically like if I did this integration, I should get something like this, like x squared plus 10. And then evaluate this from 0 to 4 and then do some plotting. So if I did this, then I got something like it will integrate this, it will give me something like this, and then it will elevate it from 0 to 5, and I got something that looks like this. Okay? So what is an anonymous function? So that's like that little bit, looks a little bit strange here. Okay, so let's look at it. So an anonymous function, it could have like one input, or it could, and one output, it could have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So here let's define an anonymous function that accepts a single input like x, and like return like an output, like implicitly return an output, an array with the same size as x that contain x plus 1. So how to do this? So basically I want to pass an array that has different value. This array will be do like x plus 1 and then give me the output. So how to do something like this? So let's call it like f is equal to, then now to define an anonymous function you have to put this like add sign, and then you put like here, that's like my input. So my input is x. Then you put a space and then you define your function. So your function in that case would be like x plus 1. Okay. Now you defined an anonymous function. So if I run this guy, I have like an anonymous function that's like x plus 1. It could be anything. It could be x squared plus 1. Now have an anonymous function that's like x. It will take the x, it will do like square and then add plus 1. Here I want to put like a dot to make sure that this is like element by element power, not like matrix power. Okay. So and then I can call this function. So I can have like my array. Let's say a is equal to 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And then I can say b is equal to, so now I have my anonymous function, and then I pass like my input to it. So it like takes one input, which is a, so it will take the a, that would be like the x here, and then I run. So here I got like my b is equal to 5, then, so basically it takes this array, so the first element of this array is like 2, so 2 squared, that's 4, plus 1, that's 5, and so on. Okay. Now here is like, this is another example, is telling me define an anonymous function with multiple inputs. So let's say like f2, again, how to define an anonymous function? You put like equal, $, and then like the two inputs. So that I have like y and x, for example, and that would be equal to, maybe let's call like this could be a constant here, so like you know, x plus y, for example. Whatever x that's passed here and whatever y that's passed here, that could be a constant. Let me define it like c is equal to 3. Okay, so that's like a constant. Okay, now call this function with this like x and y input. So here like that's my x input and that's like my y input for this function. So I can say like w, for example, is equal to my f2. Now f2, it takes two input, x and y. And again, this does not need you to name them x and y. You can name them anything. Like I could a, b, b. That could be like b1. You know, it could be anything. So it does not necessarily. So, but basically, it will like my first input, whichever name it has, that will treat it as x. My second input, whatever name it has, it will treat it as y. So here I made like a, and then b1. Okay, so I will pass this. So basically, I'm passing these to this anonymous function. It will take this x here, it will add the c to it, multiplies the c to it, and then adds the y to it. So if you run this, then I get my y is equal to 16, because here, for example, I have like 2 times 3 is 6 plus y, which is like then that's 16. Okay. So now, like here, I'm giving you this problem. I'm telling you use an anonymous function to solve something like this, where I have some constant here. So how to do this? Like you just make your input like a is equal to 1, b is equal to 2, c is equal to 4. Okay, and then my x that would be equal to 1, 4, 5, and 8. And then now that's like the input that I have like defines the anonymous function. So let's call it like f of y. That would be like a x. Oops, I did a mistake. F of y, I have to put like first like this add sign, and then my input here would be x, something like this. Okay, and then I could say like a times x squared. Okay, and again, don't forget the dot plus b times x, okay, plus c. Okay, so now I have this function. It takes like this input, and it will give me like take one input. Like whenever I call this function, I can it will like take this one input. So if I run this, so I have like a function. It has input x and it do something. Then now call this function and calculate for these x. So let's say like y is equal to fy and x. So if I pass this, then I got something like here 7, for example, because like 1 a is equal to 1, so that's like 1 square, that's 1 times 1, that's 1, 2 b x, so that's b, which is 2 times 1, that's 2, and c, that's 4, so I got like a 7. Okay, now there is also like user, similarly like to the anonymous function, I could make like a user-defined function similar to the built-in function of MATLAB. So that could be like, that's a function like this one, for example, with a function name that takes an input like 1 or multiple and gives an output 1 or multiple. So let's do this one. Let's make a function that, for example, will take these 3 inputs, do some like arithmetics to them, maybe like add n, the first one to the second one, and multiply the second one by the third one, and then give us like these 2 outputs. So how to do this? So how to do like a user-defined function, and like then user-defined functions, these are very useful because you make this like in a separate script, and that script could be very long, could be 100 of lines of like commands, one command after another. Like for example, like the functions that solve something like this, that would be a very long script, maybe like several lines, to solve something like this. So you put like several, so you want this to keep this as like a separate function, not like here in your code. So how to do this? If you are using the MATLAB, like you go to new, if you are using the MATLAB live script, you go to live function. If you are using the regular editor of MATLAB, you just go to function. So since we are using the live script, you go to like live function, and then the live function, you can put like some description here, and then it start always like with this keyword function and end with an end. And here, this like your output, it could be 1 or it could be many, like let's say output 1, output 2, it could be like several of them. And then like your input here, for example, we need like 3 input, like let's call it A1, A2, like A3, for example. Okay, so I have like 3 inputs here, and then I want to do some mathematical operations. So let's say like output 1, that would be like A1 plus A2, for example. Okay, and you can do this here, and then like output 2, that would be like, for example, A2 times A3, something like this. Okay, A2 times A3. One thing is missing, I need to name these functions. So let's call this AR, for example. Okay, then you save it. It will tell you where you want to save it, so you save it here. Make sure to save it in the current folder to be able to run it. So I will save it to like my current folder here. And then let's go back here to my functions. And now let's call this AR function. Now remember, see here, this takes like A1, A2, A3. Here this is NMK. Doesn't matter, like as long as I just like similar to the anonymous function, like remember, like here's this anonymous function, for example, it take x and y, but x and y here has like a different name, so it doesn't matter. Same here. So here, and the same for the output. Like the output does not necessarily need to have like these names. They could have like any name. So let's say here's the output. I will say like my first output is like A1. My second output is like B5, for example. Okay. This is equal to the AR functions, the functions that I just created. And this function, it has like takes 3 inputs. So I will maybe like 3, N, and then M, and then K. Okay. And it does not necessarily need to take a variable as an input. It could be just like a number. You know, if that's what I want, I could just put 5 here, or I could put a variable. So this function will like have these 2 input and give this. So if I run this, then I should expect A1 that should be N plus M, so I should get 6 here, and B5 that should be like M times K, so that should be 10. So if I run this function, okay, now maybe I need to do some saving, and maybe here I need to do some saving. So I'm getting an error, insufficient number of output for the right hand side of the, so here is telling me I have insufficient number of output. Where is this error? This error is here. Okay, so I am having an input. So that, let's then check something in my function. So this function, it has like 2 outputs, which is correct, and it takes 3 inputs. So that should be correct. So if I run this, I should, it's telling me insufficient number of outputs from the right side equal to the equal sign to satisfy assignment. So what mistakes do I have here? Well, that should be okay. This is like my AR, that's like AR here, that's like NMK here. So I mean, I have no idea why this function is not running. But it's good, like when you get this error, then you learn something new. So maybe this, let's see where this function is saved. So do I have it in my current directory? Yeah, so I have it here. The AR is called like AR is saved here. It's a function here that give like this 3 outputs. So this function is defined correctly. Here, maybe let's do it again. So that's like AR, and then takes, oh, maybe AR is, okay, let's see what do we have here as an AR. So maybe, okay, yeah, see, you see now here I made a mistake. I already had something previously defined as AR, and then, so I have like something like a variable with the name AR and a function with the name of AR. So that's why I'm getting like these error. So how to get this, fix this error? You just clear your workspace. Okay, so if I cleared my workspace, and then, oh, now I have now to, like, this like takes 3 inputs, so, and okay, so that was really a very unusual coincidence where I have like a variable observer defined with the same name as my function. So that's why I got these errors. So now if I clear this, then I run, then I get like the function is working as I'm expecting it to work. Okay, so make sure, like as a good programming practice, any built-in function or user-defined function that has a name, do not use this as a variable name. Vice versa, if you have a variable name, do not, and you want to create like a user-defined function, do not use this variable name as your function. So otherwise you will get like these funny errors, and you will think, oh my god, what's going on? Okay. Now again, like a function could have inputs without outputs. So that's like a function here that takes like this 3 outputs. it takes this 3 input but does not have an output. So here I am a function with 3 inputs and no outputs. I print the result to screen or to a file. So maybe if I'm doing some calculation and then I don't want this function to pass any output for me, but just to pass them in a file, that's okay. There could be also a function that has like output without an input. So it's a function. So like if I open this function, for example, at 3, so that's a function that perform like some calculations and give me an output without any input. And that is also useful in programming because, for example, let's say I have some 2 functions with an if condition, like if this condition is true, evaluate the first function and then give me this output. If the condition is false, then evaluate the second function and give me this output. So that could be like where functions that I don't need to have any input because like the script itself, it has, you know, like it does not require any inputs. It like have everything defined in it. A function could have also in either input and output. That could be also the case. A function could be a nested function. So that's like a function that will do some command, call another function, like pass an input to another function, then get an output from this function, pass it to another function, and then maybe give me the output. So like you see here, for example, like this add 5. Like if you look at, oops, not working. Let me do it again. Open. Add 5. So you see here, that's a function. It takes like 4 inputs. It will take the first 3 input, pass it to this function, add 1 function, and then this add 1 function has like 2 input. It will pass like these 2 input to another function, like add 2 function plus this original input here from my original function. So that's like a function that has many functions inside it. So that's also possible. I mean, because these functions are very useful because usually you want to keep your main program here clean and all this calculation you do them on the side, like because usually for engineering application, so you'll be doing a lot of calculation. You know, like you are designing a building, for example, like and then you want to make a design for like slab. Then that could be like a function. A design for a column, that could be a function. Then a design for a beam, that could be a function. And then like your main script will just call the slab functions and then call the beam functions and so on and so forth. Something like this. Okay. So let's do this example here. This exercise here. So this exercise, write a user-defined function, Fahrenheit to F2C, that converts temperature from degree Fahrenheit to degree Celsius, and you're giving this equation. So degree Celsius is equal to degree Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9. Use this function to calculate the thermal expansion. So the thermal expansion is giving like this delta L, that's the change in length, is equal to alpha. So alpha here, this is coefficient for linear expansion, which has a unit of 1 over degrees centigrade. And for the steel, that would be equal to 12 to the power 10 to the minus 6. So that's like alpha times L, like the length of your bridge, and delta T, that would be the change in temperature. Like, so if I change this from this temperature to that temperature, then how much change in length will I get? For the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, the main span of the bridge is about 127.5 meters long. Okay, at its coldest. Okay, so that's like when it's cold, because when it's cold, that's how the distance is. The bridge is exposed to a temperature ranging from 5 degrees Fahrenheit to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's the temperature range. So we want to see between this temperature range how much expansion we can get. Assume that the bridge is made entirely of steel, where the coefficient of linear expansion, like this alpha here, is this value. What is the change of length between these temperatures? Okay, so how to do this? We first need to convert like this temperature here. This temperature here is given in Fahrenheit, but you see this equation has this alpha coefficient which is in Celsius, so we need to convert these to Celsius. So how to make this? We are using MATLAB live script, so we open a live function. So we can open like a live function here, and then we can the output here, that would be like the temperature, whichever like or let's like call it C, like in degrees Celsius. Like the function name, we can give it like F underscore like 2C, okay? And then like the input, that would be F, and our equation here, that would be like C is equal to, I don't know, it was, I don't remember, like F minus 32 times like F minus 32 times 4 over 9, something like this, okay? So, okay, so this should be, let's check, make sure that this is correct. So it's F minus 32 times 5 over 9. And 5 over 9. So now I'm done. Like you hit save here, and it will tell you I will save this function here. Make sure you save it in your current directory to be able to run it. So now I have a function that can do this conversion. So now I can do the conversion. So I can say like my T1, which is like 5. So that would be like my function F underscore to C, and then my temperature would be like 5, okay? And then my temperature 2, then I use like this like user defined function F2C, and then my input here takes one input, so that's like 104, okay? So now I have like my 2 temperature, and then I calculate my delta L. That would be the alpha, which is 12e to the power negative 6, right? Time L. Oh, I mean, yes, I mean, that's okay. I mean, I could also write it like this, like I mean, if just like up to you, alpha is equal to 12e to the power minus 6, or I can write it directly, okay? And then L is equal to 1275, and then my DL, that would be equal to alpha time L time change in temperature, which would be to T2 minus T1, okay? So if I did this and I run this, then I got like about 0.84 meters. That's how much expansion you will get. Okay, so that's all for this problem. In part 2, you will be using function to solve this engineering problem about groundwater pumping. Okay, so see you in part 2.